The trauma bay was drowning in chaos. A Navy SEAL bleeding out. A bullet lodged mere inches from his heart. The surgeon trapped in gridlock traffic. And rookie nurse Ava Collins had less than 60 seconds before the monitor flatlined. She made a choice that would shatter everything. Without authorization, without hesitation, she cracked open his chest. Her hands plunged into the cavity, fingers closing around the bullet. One pull, one impossible moment. His heartbeat returned. The room froze in disbelief. Then the hospital director exploded through the doors. His hand struck her face. Sharp, brutal, final. You're done here. Pack your things. No appeal, no mercy, just silence and shame. As Ava walked toward the exit, defeat heavy in her chest. The walls began trembling. Outside, a Navy helicopter descended like an iron angel. A SEAL admiral strode through the entrance, his presence commanding immediate attention. His eyes swept the lobby, then locked onto Ava. He stopped, stared like he'd seen a phantom. And in that electric moment, the hospital understood they'd just destroyed someone they desperately needed to keep. Before we begin, take 1 second to comment, "I'm watching," and hit subscribe. It tells the algorithm you want more stories about the heroes nobody expects until it's too late. The trauma bay doors burst open at 7:42 a.m. and the room shifted instantly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that every nurse, every resident, every attending felt it in their chest before they understood it with their eyes. The man on the gurney was bleeding fast, not spurting, not theatrical, the kind of bleeding that drains life quietly. The way a cracked hull sinks a ship before anyone notices the waterline. Ava, pressure here. Someone snapped. Ava Collins stepped in automatically. Blonde hair twisted into a tight bun. Blue eyes already scanning. Early 30s. Rookie badge still too clean. The kind of nurse people assumed was careful. Obedient. Harmless. The patient wasn't harmless. Navy SEAL. Late 20s. Chest wound just left of center mass. Entry clean. No exit. BP dropping. The monitor chirped. Ava's gloved hands pressed down. Firm. Exact. She felt it immediately. Not just the blood, but the vibration beneath it. The wet resistance that told her this wasn't surface damage. This was deeper, closer. Wrong. Where's the surgeon? A resident asked. No one answered. Where's Dr. Halverson? Another voice barked louder this time. A nurse checked the board, then her phone. Her face tightened. He's still in traffic. The room went quiet for half a second. Half a second was an eternity. Ava's eyes flicked to the monitor. Heart rate erratic. Oxygen falling. The SEAL's jaw clenched as if his body knew what his mouth couldn't say anymore. How long? Someone asked. 15 minutes, maybe more. The monitor stuttered. Ava swallowed. She leaned closer, eyes tracing the wound, the angle, the depth. The blood wasn't pooling the way it should. It was being swallowed. Her pulse picked up, not with panic, but with recognition. She had seen this before, not here, not in a hospital, but in a tent that smelled like sand and antiseptic, where waiting for permission meant writing letters home instead of saving lives. We need to intubate and wait, a doctor said. No, Ava said quietly. No one heard her. The monitor dipped again. Ava, step back, someone ordered. Let the team work. She didn't move. Her fingers pressed once more, then shifted, mapping the damage beneath skin and bone. The bullet wasn't wandering. It was lodged, anchored, kissing the heart every time it beat. If it moved even a millimeter on its own, he'd be gone. Her throat tightened. We don't have clearance, the resident said, already sweating. We can't. Ava reached for the tray. Metal clinked. Someone turned. What are you doing? She didn't answer. She picked up the scalpel. That got their attention. Ava, a doctor snapped sharp. Now, put that down. Her voice stayed calm, almost gentle. If we wait, he dies. That's not your call. The monitor screamed. The SEAL's back arched. Slightly, then fell still. Flatline hovered, not yet committed, like death was deciding whether to bother. Ava didn't wait. She made the incision clean and fast. Hand steady, breath controlled, blood welled immediately, dark and heavy. Gasps rippled through the room. Stop! Someone shouted. She didn't. She opened the chest with movements she hadn't used in years, but never forgot. Muscle memory took over. Time narrowed. There it was. The bullet buried exactly where she knew it would be. She reached in. Someone swore. Someone else turned away. Ava's fingers closed around cold metal, slick with blood. For one suspended moment, everything stopped. Then she pulled. The bullet came free. The monitor stuttered, dipped, then surged. A heartbeat slammed back onto the screen, strong and unmistakable. The room froze. The SEAL gasped, a violent, ragged breath tearing from his chest. Color rushed back into his face in uneven waves. Ava exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. She stepped back, hands shaking now that it was over. "Stabilize him," she said softly. No one moved. They were all staring at her. The relief didn't last. Footsteps echoed from the doorway, sharp, angry, purposeful. The hospital director stormed in, suit immaculate, jaw tight with fury that came from hearing about chaos after the danger had passed. "What happened?" he demanded. A resident spoke too fast. The nurse, she operated. The director's gaze snapped to Ava. "You did what?" Ava met his eyes. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just said he was dying. "You are a nurse," he said, voice rising. "You do not cut into patients. You do not make surgical decisions." "He wouldn't have lasted 2 more minutes," she replied. That was when the room held its breath again, not in hope this time, but in fear. The director stepped forward. The sound echoed louder than anyone expected. A sharp crack. Ava's head snapped to the side as the slap landed, stinging public. Undeniable. Someone gasped. Someone whispered her name. The director's voice cut through the shock. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge." Silence swallowed the room whole. Ava stood still for a second, cheek burning, heart pounding. Not from the slap, but from the weight of what she'd just lost. Then she nodded. She unclipped her badge and placed it gently on the counter. "I save him," she said. Not as a defense, but as a fact. "No," the director snapped. "You crossed a line." Ava didn't argue. She walked out of the trauma bay while the SEAL breathed behind her. Alive in the locker room, her hands trembled as she cleared out her things. A photo, a spare pen, scrubs folded too neatly, voices drifted through the hall. She thinks she's more than a nurse. She's reckless. She'll lose her license. Ava lifted the box into her arms and headed for the exit. The automatic doors hissed open. She took one step forward and the building began to shake. Not violently, not enough to panic, just enough to make everyone stop. The lights rattled, windows vibrated. A low, distant thunder rolled across the ceiling. Ava looked up as a shadow passed over the glass. Someone whispered, "Is that a helicopter?" The sound grew louder, closer, and Ava froze, standing between the hospital she'd just been cast out of and something arriving that felt anything but ordinary because whatever was landing on that roof wasn't there by accident, and it wasn't finished with her yet. The sound hit before the sight. A deep boil chopping thunder that rolled through the hospital like a warning shot, rattling ceiling panels and vibrating through the soles of Ava Collins' shoes as she stood frozen just beyond the sliding doors. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Every instinct in her body already knew what that sound meant, and more importantly what it never meant on a quiet civilian morning. People poured into the lobby behind her. Nurses, residents, security guards, visitors who'd been halfway to the coffee stand moments earlier. Conversations collapsed into murmurs, then into stunned silence as they. Vibration intensified. "What's happening?" someone asked. "Is that military? Why would they land here?" Ava tightened her grip on the cardboard box in her arms. The edges dug into her palms, grounding her. She had already been fired, already been slapped. Whatever this was, it had nothing to do with her anymore. That's what she told herself. The rotors slowed, each rotation heavier than the last, until the sound settled into a low mechanical growl overhead. Dust puffed down the stairwell vents. A security guard sprinted toward the elevators, radio crackling uselessly. Then the rooftop door slammed open. Boots hit concrete with authority, not haste. Controlled. Measured. The kind of movement that didn't rush because it never had to. A man stepped into the stairwell first. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver hair cropped tight beneath a dark cap. His uniform was pressed, his posture rigid in a way that didn't come from ceremony, but from decades of command. Behind him came 2 more officers scanning automatically, eyes sharp, hands relaxed, but ready. The lobby went dead quiet. The director appeared from the corridor, face flushed, tie slightly askew from the chaos he thought he'd already handled. He straightened the moment he saw the uniform. "Sir," he began, forcing a professional smile. "I'm Director Halverson. This is a civilian medical facility. I know exactly where I am," the man said, his voice calm but immovable. "Where is the patient?" The director blinked. "Which patient?" "The SEAL brought in this morning with a gunshot wound to the chest." A ripple went through the room. "He's stable now," the director said quickly. "Our team handled it." The man's gaze sharpened. "Handled it? How?" The director hesitated. "Just long enough." Ava felt it then. That familiar tightening behind her ribs. The sense that something was tilting. That gravity was about to shift direction. "He's alive," the director said, choosing his words carefully. "That's what matters." The man stepped closer, his presence filling the space without effort. I asked how. No one spoke. A resident glanced toward the trauma wing. A nurse swallowed hard. Then quietly, someone said it. A nurse intervened. The director spun. That's not the man's eyes moved past him. They landed on Ava. She felt it like a physical touch. A weight, a recognition that made the hairs on her arms lift despite herself. The box in her hands trembled. For a long moment, the man simply stared. Not at her face alone, but at the way she stood, the way her shoulders were set, the way she held herself like someone who didn't need permission to exist. His expression changed. Not surprise, certainty. "Ava Collins," he said. Her breath caught. The room seemed to lean in. She hadn't heard that name spoken in that tone in years. Not with that mix of familiarity and disbelief. "Yes," she said automatically, then stopped herself. She didn't owe anyone an answer anymore. The director laughed nervously. "Sir, if there's been a misunderstanding, this nurse has already been terminated for gross misconduct." The man didn't look at him. "How is my nephew?" he asked Ava. The word landed like a blow. Nephew. The SEAL on the table wasn't just a patient. "He's alive," Ava said, her voice steady despite the rush of heat in her chest. "Stable for now." The man closed his eyes for half a second, just long enough to feel the relief he'd been holding back since the call came in. When he opened them again, they were harder. Who saved him? Silence stretched. The director cleared his throat. "Our surgical team," she did, a nurse said suddenly, her voice trembling, but firm. The surgeon wasn't here yet. Ava acted. All eyes turned. The director's face went pale. "You were instructed not to." "I didn't instruct you to speak," the man said quietly. That shut him down. The man took one step toward Ava, then another, each movement deliberate, as if he were approaching something fragile instead of a woman holding a box of personal belongings. "You broke protocol," he said. "Yes," Ava replied. "You risked your career." "Yes, you opened a man's chest without authorization." "Yes," a pause. "And if you hadn't, he'd be dead," she said. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I thought so." A murmur rippled through the lobby. The director found his voice again, desperation edging in. "Sir, with respect, we cannot allow." The man turned slowly. "With respect," he echoed, his tone razor thin. "You struck and fired a woman who saved my nephew's life." Every word landed clean. "You did that without knowing who she was." The director opened his mouth, closed it. The man continued. "And now you're going to explain to me why she was carrying her belongings out of this building instead of being thanked." The director stammered. "She violated every surgical regulation. And yet my nephew is breathing. That's not the point. That is the only point." The man's voice never rose. It didn't need to. Ava felt the attention shifting, turning like a tide. The same people who wouldn't meet her eyes earlier were watching her now, like she was something dangerous and rare. She hated it. She stepped back. "Sir, I didn't do it for you or for rank. I did it because there was no one else." The man's gaze softened just slightly. "I know," he said. "That's why I came myself." He turned to the director again. "You're going to reinstate her immediately." Relief flickered through the crowd. Ava felt none of it. "No," she said. The word cut through the air. The man turned back to her, surprised. "No," he repeated. She lifted the box in her arms. "I'm not interested in being rehired because someone powerful showed up." The director looked like he might faint. Ava met the man's eyes. "I already did what mattered." The man studied her again, this time longer, deeper. "Do you remember Kuwait?" he asked suddenly. Her heart skipped. The hospital seemed to disappear for a moment, replaced by heat and sand and the sound of distant gunfire. "Yes," she said carefully. "Do you remember the field tent outside Basra?" Her fingers tightened on the cardboard. "Yes, you worked on my unit," he said unofficially. "Off the books." The director looked between them, completely lost. "You disappeared," the man went on. "No records, no follow-up. One day you were just gone," Ava swallowed. "I went where they told me." "And now you're here," he said softly, still doing the same thing. She looked past him toward the trauma wing where a young man lay alive because she'd refused to wait. "I don't want a medal," she said, "and I don't want protection." The man nodded slowly. "Good." He stepped closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Because this doesn't end here." Her eyes lifted to his. "The bullet that hit my nephew wasn't random," he said. "And the call I got this morning wasn't just about saving him." A chill ran through her. "There are questions," he continued. "And people who don't want answers." Ava felt that old familiar weight settle into her chest again. The pull she'd never quite escaped. The man straightened. "Finish what you were doing," he said aloud, nodding to the box. "Then come upstairs," the director sputtered. "Sir, she's not authorized." "She is now," the man said. Ava hesitated. "Why me?" she asked quietly. The man's gaze locked onto hers. "Because whatever's coming next," he said. "Won't wait for protocol either." The monitors upstairs beeped faintly through the walls. Ava looked down at the box in her hands, then back up at him. And for the first time since the slap, since the firing, since the doors had opened beneath the helicopter's shadow, she understood one thing clearly. Saving that SEAL hadn't been the end of the story. It had been the beginning. If this part made you feel conflicted, uncomfortable, or unsure who was right or wrong, comment, never judge. Ava didn't go upstairs right away. She stood in the lobby for a moment longer, the cardboard box still in her arms, listening to the helicopter rotors wind down above her like a held breath finally released. The crowd had thinned but not dispersed. People lingered, pretending to check phones or charts, stealing glances at her as if she might vanish if they looked away too long. She hated that look. The man in uniform, Admiral James Rowan, though no one had said his name out loud yet, waited near the stairwell doors. He didn't rush her. He didn't order her. He simply watched as if he understood that whatever decision she made next couldn't be pushed. Ava set the box down gently against the wall. "I'm not staying," she said more to herself than to him. "I didn't ask you to," Rowan replied. "I asked you to finish something." She turned toward him. "You don't even know what that is." A faint smile touched his mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I know exactly what it is. You've been finishing it your whole life." That should have annoyed her. Instead, it landed uncomfortably close to the truth. They took the elevator up together. The ride quiet except for the soft hum of cables and the distant echo of alarms somewhere deeper in the building. Ava stared at the numbers as they climbed. Each floor felt heavier than the last. "You were declared non-essential after Kuwait," Rowan said suddenly. "Do you know that?" "Yes, you were scrubbed from reports, reassigned, then discharged." "Yes. And yet here you are," he continued, cutting bullets out of chests like nothing ever changed. Ava didn't answer. The elevator doors opened onto the ICU. The atmosphere was different here, controlled, tense, the kind of quiet that existed only because everyone was afraid of breaking it. Nurses moved carefully, voices stayed low. 2 uniformed security officers stood outside one room, their hands resting near their belts in a way that suggested this wasn't standard hospital policy anymore. "That's him," Rowan said. Ava approached the glass slowly. The SEAL lay pale against white sheets, chest wrapped, machines breathing and counting for him. His eyes were closed now, but his vitals were steady, alive in a way he hadn't been an hour ago. Rowan exhaled long and deep. "Thank you," he said. Ava shook her head. Don't for what?